Welcome everybody. We have our second webinar today with Kirk Russell, who has been a DARCA board member for many years. He's going to fill us in on some of the history that we left off with Karen Rademacher last time. So welcome everybody. Kirk, our first question for you is, when did you first come to DARCA and what drew you to us?
So thank you, Amber and Michaela, for the opportunity to talk about DARCA's history. I'm a huge fan of DARCA. So I am the finance section chief at the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and I've been in the chief role for about 12 years. But I came to CWCB in 2004, and I had replaced a gentleman by the name of John Van Sciver, and he was in the position of project development / marketing for the CWCB's loan program. And in arriving on the job, when he kind of transferred, he had retired, and he was sharing with me just the ins and outs, and it was pretty high on the list. He says, this organization, DARCA, is extremely important to not only the CWCB, but the state of Colorado. And I think he was in maybe some capacity as a board member or something, and it was still fairly new. Once I got involved in it and learned what DARCA represented and how it connected back into the project work that the finance section of CWCB is involved with, it was obvious that it was something, as he advertised, that needed to be front and center for what we do day in and day out at CWCB. It's the same people. It's reservoirs and canal and ditches, diversion structures is our mainstay at CWCB at the finance section. So it was a good fit, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
Can you tell us the background and history of DARCA? Karen told us about the very beginning. Could you tell us what DARCA's kind of been through since the beginning?
So again, I think I can only speak back to 2004. Karen, she was, and I do remember, I didn't interact a lot with Karen back at the time. I think maybe she had transferred into her new role. I think anyway, wherever she went from doing what she was doing when she was more involved with DARCA, it left a little bit of a hole there because she was instrumental in getting it started. Early on, and for the most part, DARCA, early on in my interaction with DARCA, it was a organization focused on an annual convention. And back then, there was not a lot of other opportunities to interact with water folks in this type of environment. I think since that time, the basin roundtables became more prevalent because there was funding available to those folks for grants and educational activities. I think a lot of the forums were also in their early stages. I know the Arc Basin Forum was somewhat prevalent. The South Platte was going strong, but I think there weren't as many opportunities to gather water folks back then. And so the annual conference for DARCA was one that was certainly on the staff at CWCB's list to be involved and interact and share ideas. We talk internally at CWCB. It's really less about the message that's coming from the podium and more about our opportunity to catch up on project opportunities, funding opportunities that CWCB can be involved with, and learning lessons. I think sharing lessons across the different ditch and reservoir company owners, I think that is just so powerful because you end up just doing your thing. And as I've learned in this role, water rights across the state of Colorado are not consistently dealt with. And it was a way for us to start comparing notes. And I know that early on, what I thought was a very, very powerful piece was that handbook that was produced. And it was still early internet era, although I'm sure the internet was around. I just don't know that the members of DARCA were so connected by internet. I think dial-up was probably the only way they would get into it, and many of them weren't interested in using that kind of technology. So that actual printed book, I thought, brought a lot of benefit to DARCA early on. and its members.
So DARCA's been through some kind of bumpy times. You've gone through a couple executive directors, and we're kind of finding our footing. What has gotten DARCA through all of that, and what are you most proud of?
Yeah, that's interesting. The bumpy times of DARCA were either just prior to my arriving in the role at CWCV, but I remember, and maybe Karen spoke of this, that they, after their executive director decisions were being made, I think they contracted it out. And I remember hearing some stories about that the role of executive director of DARCA did not line up well with having a contract person in that role. It wasn't just a job to do, that the executive director really has to be mission focused, and that's got to be in the executive director, which we certainly see that in you, Amber, and much appreciate. When the passion is there, it's a game changer. And I think they struggled. They even got upside down financially. I think they were borrowing some money to stay alive, to honor some contracts. And it was shortly after I came into my role, I think they were able to pull out of that deficit and start looking up. We never went negative again with the books. And, you know, again, I think technology has helped the communication that is available, and just watching things, and again, generating a solid base of membership revenue is a critical piece in doing what we do. Early on, I think there was a huge dependency on financing or operating DARCA's budget, utilizing the revenue from the conference or the annual convention that we have. And I always felt that was a little bit risky if you were going to rely on the success of that conference, because I don't know, there just seems to be plenty of opportunities for that to fall apart, such as, maybe a major storm, or who knows, a venue burns down, or some miscommunication, and all of a sudden the hotel double books and it just implodes on you. So I thought we would be better off getting set up so that our membership is really paying the way, and letting the conference be a standalone revenue generator to pay for it. And I think we're in good place with that. And I may have missed your original question. You were talking about the Rocky Road times. Was there another part of that?
Yeah, what got DARCA through some of those tricky times, and then what are you most proud of?
Boy, there's a lot I think that you could be proud of. To me, it says a lot to those that originally founded the DARCA organization, Karen certainly included, and Matt Cook, and I'm sure some others. It was just a needed organization. There is a camaraderie within the ditch and reservoir ownership, and many of the members are agricultural types. And again, back in the day, this was their opportunity to come together and share ideas. So I think the glue that kept it all together were obviously the people, because the mission was right. There was a place for DARCA folks, and aging infrastructure is something we could continue to talk about. And the opportunity for funding helped, whether it was through CWCB or other venues for efficiencies on the West Slope with some federal funds and things like that. So money helps always to bring people together. But to be most proud of, probably, and maybe this is just because it's recent, John McKenzie did a lot of good things for DARCA, and towards the end of his career as the executive director, that it is always difficult to transition. And we were in a little bit of a hole financially. We needed to pull out of, and I don't know, I take great pride with the board, and Manny Colon as the president at the time, kind of pulling it out. I don't want to say we were in a tailspin. It wasn't that bad, but just pulling it up and getting things back in order with a volunteer board without an executive director was a little bit dicey. There were some moments I think the board would talk through and say, do we need to exist? Are we still relevant in the water world? And I would think all board members that were part of that would say, you know what, I'm glad we figured out a way to make ends meet and keep this good age or the association together. So yeah, that's what I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. I think a couple of those things came up in our talk with Karen too, all about the people. I think the people who are involved in DARCA, they just, I don't know, there's a different atmosphere. And then the relevance piece also came up because, you know, even when I came on, we were still trying to figure out our relevance. And I think we're getting there. So that definitely helps.
We are, it just feels good, Amber, and I give you a lot of credit for that. It just feels like we're making a difference. And you know, that's what so much of what we do is about. If you do it and nobody notices, why do I even want to work with it? So yeah, I think DARCA is making headway, so that's good.
Well, thank you for that.
I see there we were going to talk a little bit about pandemic. You want to talk some about one of the things that we're probably seeing, not just in DARCA, but in general. I think we would all be blown away that we would believe we could survive a pandemic in the business world. When I'm going to say this is probably 2015-ish, a lot of the meetings that we were trying to have were online. And again, board members or members, they just weren't savvy with internet, camera, microphones. Dial-up might have been a factor in a lot of the remote areas, but just getting even board members together was so difficult. You'd be on a cell phone call or a conference call, and maybe a couple cell phones, and you had the background noise, people talking over each other. And just the opportunity to use a Zoom format or meeting on virtual form, I think was probably a game changer for DARCA. We needed to be able to bring together non-technical people. A lot of the board members would be agricultural folks that are trying to meet in a window that allows them to continue to put water on the ground. So being able to meet like we have has been super beneficial, and maybe even the pandemic has been beneficial to DARCA. We're actually meeting, we're prepared to meet on a virtual call, and having your organization skills to make that happen, and you're involving Michaela in a lot of the things we're doing, social communications has been powerful. So excellent stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of a blessing that we had it. I think the pandemic, while it has been awful in a lot of ways, the more I talk to people about it, they think, man, it really focused us, whether that's professionally or personally. They're just like, man, I found out what my values were, and we were able to return to a place that is a little bit more focused on family and that sort of thing. And I think DARCA is no different. We were able to really figure out why we are still here. You know, there's WECO and there's all these other organizations. And I've said it before, like there's no shortage of water nonprofits in Colorado. And we may have been one of the first, but we're definitely not the most prominent anymore. But I think it's helped us figure out why we're still here and what our capacity is. So I think it's been really great. It was a little nerve-wracking at times though, because you know the conference is or has been one of the biggest money makers for DARCA as a nonprofit. We don't, do a lot of other things that generate our revenue. So it was a little nerve-wracking when we had to cancel the conference this year. But I think we're in a really good spot and we continue to grow, which is really neat. In the midst of a pandemic, we were able to do things really like creatively. And we brought Michaela on at the perfect time because we were already set up and ready to go to do social media and outreach in a variety of ways. So I think it was a perfect timing. If I had a glass ball, that could have been the way we did it, but I didn't. Michaela, what do you think?
I think I was just going to say, you're talking about the values, and I think filtering everything through our values over the last year and filtering everything we do through our mission and our vision and just those core principles we're trying to get through. I think that's where you grow, because you're not trying to focus on too many things, or I don't know, just everyone being on the same page and collaborating around the central core of who DARCA is. And just in general, when you do that, that's where you really grow. And I think that's probably where we saw success, is I think in a time where all your values are thrown up into question, and at a time where everything's confusing and scary, having a central backing to be like, okay, this is who we are, this is who we stand for. I think that's really what did it.
Well, and that's the social media work that you guys are doing. I've said it many times. You know, we're a board that's a little older, not real old, but older. And I would imagine a lot of, at least in the board's case, and maybe even in our membership's case, they're not directly social media driven type. It's getting more and more. And I agree with you. The timing was perfect, and Michaela's excitement in getting that. I can't tell you how many times I'll stumble across a Facebook post or a LinkedIn something, and it just kind of brings a smile to my face that's my group. That's DARCA. I'm part of that. That's cool stuff. So yeah, you guys are doing dynamite with that, and I think I can speak for the rest of the board. They feel the same way. They great pride in what you guys are doing. So great job.
Thank you. I think we have a pretty great board too, though. When I look at some of the other boards that I know kind of exist in my network, I think DARCA's board is by far the best board. I don't know why. We just have a really great group of people. We're not super, I don't know, headstrong one way or the other. We're able to have differences of opinion, but we always come back and we always have the mission of DARCA at heart. It's not personal agendas or anything like that. So I think we're a well-rounded organization. It's not just us, but Michaela is pretty great.
So you guys totally agree. Michaela's great.
You two are great. On that note, what are some of the successes of DARCA that both of you see?
I'm sorry, could you ask again, Michaela?
Oh yeah, of course. What are some of the successes that both of you see in DARCA?
Successes. I think it circles back to sharing information. That's a big one. And again, I think we're on a very steep opportunity climb because of just the internet in general and sharing information across that. But you know, it's one thing to have an opportunity to read something on the internet, and it's another to be connected to the people that are actually making those decisions, and you know, maybe where they are in their career. And you know, we've toyed with different ideas about how to make DARCA's platform beneficial, whether it be through, you know, sharing resources or sharing a recommendation of an engineering firm or a law firm, or even some staff members. I remember at one time we had a kind of a bulletin board kind of thing, and it's difficult sometimes because you can get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that comes through. But yeah, it's in the water industry. I don't think people understand the fact that it's not as big as one would think. It's a lot of the same people wearing different hats and being involved with water. And I think a lot of groups have done a good job in trying to open that door to other folks that just assume you turn on your tap and water shows up. And I remember joking about, you know, if you ask some kid, where does your water come from? They'll say, from the sink. And I think you'll ask some adults, where does your water come from? And they'll say, I think there's a pipe in the street. So there wasn't a huge difference between the child and the population. So I think we've done a great job educating people in that regard. How about you, Amber?
I think some of our successes come from that networking piece too. A lot of our members will call me and say, hey, I need I don't know, a feasibility study, or my dam needs replaced. What do I do? Or they have these questions and they don't know who else to turn to. So I think we're lucky in that they still see us as a resource. And then I think it's so neat when I can take that ditch company and I can say, hey, we have these 10 engineering firms that are members or sponsors of DARCA. Why don't you start there? Or, I have these lawyers who are also members and sponsors of DARCA. If you need something, start there. So it's really neat to be able to kind of network all of these people together so we can get them taken care of, because I'm not the person who's going to go out and fix their dam and give them the numbers for it, but we have people who can, and that's a really neat part of who DARCA is. And there's been quite a few people who have used that in the past year or so. So I think that's neat. I also think that we have a lot of really cool things coming down the pipe, and it's because people are realizing that we're still here or that we exist, and they think it's pretty neat. So I've had lots of conversations lately with people who are like, oh, that's a really neat idea. Maybe DARCA should partner with us. Or what if DARCA takes that on? And that's just really neat to me, because when I started, it was just a conference. And then we had talked about a couple other things, but now we're a conference, but that's not all we are. We're also, this network, and we're a resource hub. And, there's all these other ideas that are going to be coming out over the next year or so that DARCA's name is going to be tied to. And that's really cool to me. I think that's a really big success. Then the last one, I think, is our attendance, not necessarily just the rate, but the demographics. Our first conference that I went to was a lot of older men. And now we're seeing some younger people and a lot more women and that sort of thing. And it's just neat to me that it's not just these older guys that have stuck with DARCA for years and years and years, but it's other people who are kind of getting wind of us and kind of see what we're doing too. So I think that's a success. Michaela, what have you seen as a success in the time that you've been with us?
Hey, Michaela, before you start, can I lay some groundwork of where you came from within DARCA? And I'm going to start with, I met you first. I think we brought you and another young man into a conference or a convention we had up in Longmont or Fort Collins, maybe it was Fort Collins.
Yep.
And I think Amber introduced, didn't you win an award or a scholarship of some sort?
She was the state FFA vice president, and she brought the president with her. And so they came to speak, and I think that they were our opening speakers for the convention.
I just remember being so impressed by who you two were. I tried to imagine myself at your age, and I'm thinking standing in front of a crowd of old men, because I agree with Amber. It's just the nature, a bunch of Carhartts. And here you were, and you were just charismatic and somebody that seemed like was going to do great things. And here you are, part of our mission here at DARCA. And I know you're a student and you've got great things ahead of you. But I love this question turned back to you to say your first impression of DARCA and now what you see. And it'll be fun to hear your context of this whole thing.
Absolutely. So I actually wasn't even supposed to go to that conference. One of the girls who was supposed to go, we all were paired off into partners to kind of travel the state, because Colorado's pretty big when everything's 8 hours away from corner to corner. However, so I actually was supposed to be over on the western slope, I think in like the Durango area that day, and one of my teammates got sick, and so someone closer went to that one, and then I went to DARCA. So it was such a meant to be thing, because also once I was there, I was like, wow, this is like, these are the people who I could see myself being in their future career steps. And then I think I talked about what it's like to be a mentor to students and how that's like a really impactful way to help the next generation come along. And so I think that was the basis of our talk. And then just staying in contact with Amber over the time. I actually knew her husband Mike pretty well too. So being able to stay in contact with both of them, they're such great mentors. And I mean, I think once I got to meet more of DARCA, I think that's just everybody. I think it's just this attitude of being willing to step out and lend a helping hand wherever you can, whether that's to a student or to someone who's having some water issues or someone who's trying to navigate something new, like we kind of talked about so far. I think just that willingness to open up and extend some help is, I think, what sets DARCA apart. And then I'd also say, like, being in my role now, I think some of the successes of DARCA is, as much as sometimes you all are like, I don't want to do this, or I can't operate certain social media platforms or getting on the website. I think everybody's willing to try. I think my greatest success was honestly getting Manny on LinkedIn a few months ago. He's like, yeah, everybody tells me I'm trying to connect with them, but I don't understand. So I think honestly, those are, I know they're little, but I mean, I think that it shows the demographic of people and the attitude that we aren't stuck in our ways. We're willing to grow and change as the times are changing. And I think it's really important to be flexible and adaptable. And I think that's why we've had so many successes, even in a pandemic.
I think both you and Amber have done a great job in not just saying we should do this, because those of us that don't have social media interests would respond with, oh, I can't, I don't know how, that's, let somebody else deal with that. I think both of you do a great job in sharing with us as board members. You start showing us some data, you start showing us some successes. We can latch on to a report. That's what we're looking at all the time in our day jobs, a report on how we're doing on things. And when you can convert, the successes of the social media and reaching out and showing those, it goes a long ways. So thank you for your efforts on that.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right, so we've kind of talked about DARCA's role and finding our relevance and that sort of thing. And I can't remember, Michaela, if we talked to Karen about it or not, but in November, we had our annual board retreat, and we kind of set kind of our value statements and our mission and kind of set ourselves a filter of sorts for DARCA. So I want to know what you guys think our role in the water world is and what sets us apart. Can you kind of shed some light for our members and non-members about who we are?
Is that to me, Amber, first?
Sure, it's to both.
Okay. Yeah, as you were asking that question, there are, as we talked earlier, all the opportunities to be in water. I've always felt like DARCA, that what separates us is our membership and our role connects the municipal and agricultural communities in a way that, I mean, they're in the same mission. When they're in the Mutual Ditch Company board meeting, they're both coming from the totally different space, the producers versus municipalities trying to keep enough water for the showers to run in their community. And maybe those dynamics and the timing of water and the things that they're dealing with inside of each one of those mutual ditch companies, and the risk associated with that water not being there. Municipality is going to have some redundancy. The agricultural guys and gals, they got to have the water that year. They don't have other opportunities. It's either there or it's not. And so I think the difference in what sets DARCA apart is we're bringing those two very, very strong industries together and bringing them to the table to talk through the issues that they're dealing with. Because so much of what we do is about respect. You got to be able to respect what the other side is dealing with. And then now, I think the big push on the environmental side, we're seeing a much better connection to the environmental folks. They want to share what is important to them. And for the most part, I think even the agricultural and municipal folks understand that. And once that respect is there, you can get a lot of work done. And I think DARCA is the place to provide that environment to talk about it.
I think I just resonate everything you said, Kirk, and I think from like an outside looking in, I think the role would just be to be like a central hub for these professionals to come together to exchange all of that information and really develop a place to collaborate and to grow as a whole. And so I think everything you said, Kirk, I completely agree.
How about you, Amber?
I think what sets us apart is the feeling of family that you get when you go to a conference or when you hang out with us, even if it's online. I think that it feels like a family. It doesn't feel like any other conference, which is so cool to me because I don't know, there's just a warmth and a sense of fun there. You know, you can talk business all day long, and sometimes we do, but it's like you're just with a bunch of friends. And it's really cool because we have those municipal, environmental, agricultural, and recreation folks all sitting in the same room. And, you know, sometimes you would think, ooh, it's going to get pretty tense in there, but it never does. And it's just such a neat atmosphere. So I think that's what sets us apart by far, is that, you know, we don't have to be fancy. We don't have to be some, you know, high class conference. We're just real. We're who we are. And we all just kind of respect each other, which I think is really cool.
Great stuff. Love that. Because I know I would imagine most of the board members would share that they don't want a stuffy conference where you sit there and listen to somebody drone on and on. Keeping it light, keeping it just like a family is there's a lot of value there. Need more of that, don't we?
Absolutely.
So let me ask the two of you. So I shared a little bit how I ended up at DARCA. You know, we all kind of look back and how did you get where you are? And you start looking back. So the two of you are involved with DARCA. I can't imagine either one of you 10 years ago said, that's who I want to be part of. Amber, let me start with you. What brought you here? What drew you into this organization?
Yeah, so I'll start with some context. I grew up on a farm and ranch in Southeast Colorado. So water was always kind of a big deal, always chasing water and that sort of thing. And I was a little bit persistent. So my dad told me I should always go into water law. And being the stubborn person I was, I decided I was not going to do that. So I ended up becoming an English teacher of all things. And then realized, you know what, I don't think this is what I want to do. I think I need to do something bigger. I want to lead a little bit more. I've always been a leader. So I decided to open up my own business. And through that, my husband also works in water and has since he was in high school. And I just always thought that was super neat. So I started getting involved in my Basin Roundtable and kind of worked my way up. And then somebody invited me to meet Manny. And through there, we just kind of started talking about DARCA and that sort of thing. And I met Kirk at the Colorado Water Congress. I think it was the summer edition of one of those, and became their conference manager for the 2019 session, I think. And then from there, it's just gone off. But I think what drew me in was at first the people, because it was so cool. And then I thought, man, this organization has so much potential and opportunity that we could just be really great. And I think I could be decent at it. So here I am trying my best and having a ton of fun, I'll add.
Boy, you just took me back. I remember sitting at the Colorado Water Congress table, and I think you step up and said, I understand you have a position open I might be interested in. And I'm thinking, wow, that's aggressive. I don't even know that we had advertised it yet, but yeah, it was just a perfect match from the beginning.
Yep, it was. I've never been so bold, but it worked out that time.
How about you, Michaela?
Yeah, I know when we did our last webinar series, I talked about what this digital world is like. And if you would have asked me probably, when I was in elementary school or growing up, if I would ever see myself like managing like different social media platforms or managing a website or just being that communications marketing type role, I would have said no way. Like I could never even have imagined that. And honestly, like it's even as I grew up and saw that that was an option, I never really wanted to do that because I've always been tied to agriculture. I never grew up on a farm or ranch, but growing up in the different agricultural programs that high school offers, I think that really set me apart. And my childhood dream was actually always to become a lawyer. I just always loved like the research and the writing and trying to come up with an argument and trying to just defend and protect people. And so once I kind of put ag and law together, a lot of people were like, well, water law right away. And I was like, well, let's learn about this. And as I got older and through high school and beginning of college, I kind of realized I'm more of like a science thinking mindset. Like I love the science behind water, and I love why we need certain things for certain crops, or why different systems need this water. And so I kind of took a different approach, and as I have, I've honestly seen so much. I've seen like a whole new career open up before my eyes, and I think that's what's really cool. Is you get told when you're young, it's doctors, lawyers, teachers. You don't learn about natural resource management, or you don't. I mean, you learn about agriculture, but you kind of, not growing up in it, you kind of accept the fact that starting an agricultural production takes a special person, and it's really hard to do if you weren't born into it. And so I think kind of accepting that, I had to learn and grow and figure out what other options are out there. And looking into this water resources field, I think you wake up every day with purpose, and I think that's where I want to be one day, is waking up knowing I'm making a difference and seeing the challenges we have ahead of us when it comes to water and when it comes to just all natural resource management. I think it's really valuable. And I think I'm studying soil and crop sciences, and I mean, irrigated agriculture is the #1 user of water. So if I could learn the ins and outs of that, I think I can learn the ins and outs of a lot of water users and really be able to really dive into some of the problems on the front end before it ends up in a courtroom, or before everyone's just fighting over it, or before the next generation gets an even bigger problem than what my generation will. So I don't know, when I grew up, I never would have thought that this was a possibility. And honestly, DARCA has has allowed me to apply all that I'm learning and start making a difference even before I graduate, and make me be a part of this professional world. And I've really loved it and appreciated every opportunity I've been given, even if it is social media. I mean, you can always talk about what you love, and I think that's a lens I focus on when I'm trying to communicate the vision of DARCA. This is something I really love and am passionate about, and so let me communicate this in a very authentic way to really engage all of our targeted audiences.
Well, you're bringing up a great point. I think organizations like DARCA are allowing those maybe polar opposite interests to come together, and going back to that respect idea, because it all falls apart when we go to our corner and have attorneys involved. We stop talking, when in fact, many times we've got the same common interest in the end, and that's to best utilize the water in the state of Colorado. You guys are part of something important for future generations of Coloradoans. So again, DARCA is just an awesome organization, and you guys are instrumental in that and moving it forward. So thank you for the opportunity to be on this call.
I will end on the note that when I first met you, Kirk, you were the first one to greet me at the DARCA conference, and the one that energized the whole room. So we would not be who we are without you either.
Well, I'm a lot better in the morning than I am in the afternoon with energy, I'll tell you that much. But no, it's again, a fun organization, and you guys are you make it fun too. So again, thank you, Amber, for the opportunity to talk. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. We appreciate you too. And hopefully everybody listening to these will kind of get to know us a little bit better, and then can join us at a conference in 2022, because we've actually booked it, and then they can experience it for themselves. So thank you guys for jumping on. I appreciate it.
Very good. Take care. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.